This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Tara Brown, the Connection Coach. So excited to have you here. You're an author, you're a keynote speaker, you do a lot of workplace coaching, an educator, though. I think just from the core,
Yes.
You're an educator.
Absolutely.
So you've written, one of the books you've written here, Different Cultures, Common Ground, 85 Proven Strategies to Connect to Your Classroom. You do a lot of educational coaching. And what's the basis of this? Why did you decide to write this book?
I think because my journey took me for so many different areas of the country. I started out in rural, in my own hometown. I taught there for 5 years. I ended up going to the West Coast, and I taught in Long Beach in heavy gang territory. And we started a dropout prevention program for very high risk, at-risk youth. And then I ended up in Nashville with about 40 countries represented. And so in all of that, which was a wonderful experience for me, both personally and professionally, when I stepped away from teaching and I wanted to really get clear on what direction do I want to go and what is it that worked in the classroom, what I realized was it didn't matter what region of the country I was in, it didn't matter the demographic, it didn't matter the background of the kids. Kids are kids are kids. And so when I sat down to write that, I wanted just to have a resource for teachers to be able to look at it and say, what can I try to connect with this kid? There's days where, you're struggling to not end up on the evening news. It's so stressful.
Yes.
It's so crazy. Right. And so I want them to be able to take a look at that and go, okay, maybe I can use strategy 27 today. And, it just really helps educators just kind of have another tool in their toolbox.
Right.
It really does.
So what are the challenges of being an educator today?
I think right now, the pressure and the focus on end of course testing, moving the academic needle, what's the data saying, testing throughout the entire year has taken a huge space in the classroom and the school community. And I think that teachers, I think administrators, and I think kids are feeling the pressure, and I think it's trickling down oftentimes in ways that's not real productive, but I think the testing focus is really changing the landscape of the educational system.
You're very much a relationship person.
Absolutely.
And you think it's critical for the teacher to have that really one-on-one relationship with the student. So that kind of pressure has to disconnect that relationship time.
Unfortunately, it does, and that's why I'm so passionate about my work, because the research supports the need to have the relationship first. There's absolutely no doubt that we are feeling first and then thinkers second. So how we feel, the emotional state that we're in totally dictates how the brain is going to respond and if it's in a position to be able to take in information. So for my work, it's really to remind teachers of what they know at their heart, is that the relationship is the foundation. And if that foundation isn't there, we're not going to move the academic needle like we want to. We've got to make sure that we continue to allow for the space to build the relationships. I've had teachers come up to me after I've spoken with tears in their eyes saying, Tara, I know what you're saying, but I don't feel like I have time to build relationships. And my response is, we don't have time not to. Because especially if we're dealing with under-resourced youth, the relationship is absolutely the key to opening their heart and their mind.
When you say under-resourced, what do you mean by that, under-resourced youth?
I'm saying kids who are living in an environment where their needs from here to there and everywhere in between are not being met. We've got kids who go home and flip the lights on, flip the switch and don't know if the light's going to come on. We have kids that we know the only meal they're going to get, hot meal, is going to be at lunch. We have kids whose lives are in absolute chaos. I say all the time, you can't read a book and run from a lion at the same time. And for a lot of our kids who are under-resourced, the safety and sanctity is in the school. And when they leave the school, that's when they're running from lions. I had kids in Long Beach where when they left their house in the morning, they knew there was a possibility that they would not make it home at night because of their gang affiliation and the gang territory they were walking through. I coached boys basketball team out there, and several of my boys lived in the housing project that was right behind the school, and it was a violent, violent existence. So when we're talking under-resourced, it can look different depending on, but kids are not getting the things that they need in order to be able to show up ready to learn.
Yeah, that is key, and I think we often forget that. Just as a society, we often forget that. So you worked in Nashville with Alignment Nashville as a leadership teacher. Was that sort of a unique position? And
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
It was a great experience. I actually was blessed to be asked to pilot that program. It was at 2 schools, and ours was one of them. And so I got to pilot that. And the thought is that there are kids that can only influence their sphere of kids in the school. Adults can't get to them. If we wanted to change the culture and climate of the school, it has to start with the kids and who they're influencing. And so we decided to go after the non-traditional leaders. You know, we wanted those kids who, when you think about a leader in the school, you're not thinking those that run for office or the cheerleaders or the quarterback. We wanted the ones that really, if they were given an environment and given skills and taught about leadership and taught about self-confidence and given goals and given responsibility, could they become leaders in their own right? And trust me, I'm going to tell you, there were kids sitting up in there for 3-4 weeks that were like, am I in the right, are you sure you got the right I mean, they couldn't believe that anybody had thought that they were a diamond in the rough. And so to be able to take those kids and work with them and watch them grow and watch them begin to believe that they could be leaders in their own little world was unbelievably exciting and empowering for them.
You talk about a circle of influence in this program. What does that mean, circle of influence?
Well, I think it was Jim Rohn that said that you are the antithesis or the total of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. You become, through the years, a picture of those 5 people. And so sometimes our kids don't make really good choices of who they're hanging around with, but they are absolutely being influenced by those people. And so when you're talking about your sphere of influence, it's those people who are having the biggest impact on your decisions, how you show up in life, how you view life, that type of thing.
So if you took one of these students, one of these diamonds in the rough, and they changed their circle of influence through their leadership abilities.
Exactly.
Then you change a culture.
That's right. That was the whole premise of that program, of saying that we've got resources in our school that we need to tap into. And some of these kids who feel like they're just going through the hallways as vapors, all of a sudden are saying, no, we want to put you in a position where you can have an influence on those that you're around.
One of the things I noticed in that program was they had a service project, right, as part of a service learning project.
Yes.
So how important do you think service is to leadership?
It's huge. And Bonnie Bernard did some research, and there was 3 things that came out of her body of research as far as how do you increase resiliency in kids. 1 was personal positive relationships, the 2nd was high expectations, and the 3rd was an opportunity to serve. And research on the brain and research on social emotional is really clear that when we put kids in a position to give back, to serve others, it can have life-altering changes for them. And when you're dealing with under-resourced youth, a lot of times they've never been in a position to give because they've needed so much. They've always had people giving and helping and supporting and building them up. And all of a sudden, when you give kids that opportunity to feel what that feels like, it can be life-altering for them, and they need those opportunities to feel that and have their heart be full with those experiences.
Oh, that's great. And I bet you saw some real change there.
It blows your mind. One of my classes wanted to put on a faculty luncheon. We had over 150 staff. When they got together by themselves and brought that to me, I had to really work hard on not gulping in front of them. It's like, you got to be kidding me. And it was, let's do it. Let's figure out how to do it. And so, yeah, there were some really powerful moments during that journey with them.
Now, you really have just had such wonderful experience. You have you've been a speaker from DC to Dubai, right? You
True.
actually did some teaching and keynote speaking to teens and to educators in the Middle East.
Yes.
What kind of an experience was that?
You know, one of the most powerful things that came out of that was, again, people are people are people. This situation that we were stepping into there had not been many conferences there, and there were women in full burqas, there were men in full chic robes. The men and women didn't interact, and it was a really intense environment just because of that, respecting those cultural aspects. But once we got them, once I had them in the room, once we were doing our stuff, you know, their kids bugged them too. Their administrators drive them crazy too. And so we were able to, again, find common ground. Even though our cultures were so different, we were able to really connect on a lot of areas that for educators, it doesn't matter what part of the globe you're in. It's still the same challenges. And it was an unbelievable experience for me, both personally and professionally, to be able to support that work there.
I'm really excited to hear you speak because I've heard about you for so long. I mean, educators are inspired by you. You really do know how to, one of the things we talked about was reawakening them. Why do you love this so much? And why do you think you're so effective in this kind of a role?
I've always said that educators are probably one of the toughest audiences. We have some really painful professional development through the years. I mean, every teacher has their horror stories about how bad professional development can be. And I think part of it is teachers want to know that who's standing in front of them is real, has been in the trenches, and gets it. And I don't know how to speak other than from my heart and from my experiences, and I just try to bring that to every message and every opportunity that I have. I try to just speak from the heart and as authentically as I know how, and I think it resonates, and I'm grateful that it does.
Yeah, it is great, and it does. You know, you have experience as a public high school teacher. Also, some of the other things we were talking about, you got your BS degree from the University of South Florida. Mm-hmm. And a master's degree from Tennessee State University.
Correct.
Is that right? And you talked about being a coach, being a basketball coach.
Yes.
But are you an athlete? You look like an athlete.
I've been told I was.
Okay, I'm sure you're a very good athlete. So I heard a CEO tell me one time that they really look for staff and employees who have athletic ability because it keeps you agile and you're a risk taker and you don't get hung up on the moment because you've got to move to the next. Exactly. How important do you think those kinds of qualities are in a leadership position?
They're vital. They're vital. And I know from my experience in the classroom, I taught from a coach's perspective. Because for me, it was really important for me to understand and get to know who I was working with and how to get in their head, so to speak, and know what was going on in their head. What's the dialogue that's running around in their head? What do they need from me? Just like you can't coach every athlete the same, you can't treat every student and assume that every approach is going to be effective. And so from a leadership standpoint, taking what I learned as an athlete and what it took to overcome certain things and the resiliency that it takes to go from point A to point B and the self-doubt that can creep in, all of that is going on with all of these kids. I mean, most teenagers are just hot messes. And so they really need those caring adults in their life to say, I get it. I understand why you're frustrated. I understand why that tape is running around in your head. And the leadership standpoint of what does an athlete go through in training can so apply when we're working with kids in many different arenas.
You mentioned a caring adult and a consistent adult. It's something we talk about a lot at WCTE with our American Graduate Initiative, and that how students, children really need that to have a caring, consistent adult. And I know in your connection coaching, that's what you're talking to teachers about. But who was that for you? Who was that person for you?
At what stage of my life?
Well, you do have several, don't you? I mean, you would have to. People would, because it's a continuous journey.
Yes, well, there's a couple of people that pop into my head, and I'll just share really briefly. I was the youngest of 4 kids. My oldest sister is special needs, and then there's a brother and a sister and me. And I was the tallest one in my class until 5th grade. I wore corrective shoes because my feet turned in, and I had to sleep in a brace to help straighten them. And I have what I call Elmer Fudd disease. I could not say R's until I was about 4th grade. So my name is Tara Marisa Brown. So if you can imagine not being able to say R's, and you're the tallest one in your class, and you're wearing saddle Oxfords, I say all that to say I was really shy when I was younger. And I remember when I went to preschool, Hannah Jordan was this large German woman who was absolutely delightful. And I remember, first of all, being awed by how big she was. But it was so cool because it's like I had always known I was the tallest one anywhere at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that connection with Hannah, I think, was huge to allow me to kind of find myself. And then as I went into middle school, I had a 7th grade teacher that had been a former speed skater, and she was about 22. And for whatever reason, I think she saw that I was just kind of floundering. I think that she saw that I had some raw athletic talent. She's the one that got me into basketball. And so I think that connection with that teacher was pretty pivotal during that time.
That's great. I'm sure you've mentored students as well. What does it mean to be a mentor?
I think that the responsibility is monumental. You know, there's a quote that I saw my 2nd year of teaching that said, "Don't worry that they're never listening, worry that they're always watching." And I never forgot that. And I know that kids, regardless of how old they are continually watching. And they're wanting to see, how is this person showing up consistently? How do they treat others? How do they talk to my peers? Kids are seeing a lot. And so being a mentor is the responsibility of, I've got to set that bar very high for how I show up every day. The level of consistency, my level of enthusiasm, my passion, my willingness to see what's really going on with this child instead of having a knee-jerk reaction. There's a lot that entails us taking on that role of saying, you can trust in how I'm going to show up every day. And that's hard sometimes. But it's an intention that I think we have to set as adults, that we know at any moment of the day a child is watching how we speak, how we interact.
Yeah, that's so true. Where did you grow up?
I grew up right above Tampa in a little rural town called Dade City. Lots of hunting and fishing and jacked up pickup trucks. And what's so interesting is the other side of the county is like a different world. But that area where I grew up was country, and it was great.
Yeah, I bet. Do you miss that, or do you, living in Nashville, do you need to escape? That's why you're here in Cookeville, so that you can get that
I tell you, I
feeling?
so love when I'm able to step into this level of ruralness, because it's a different feel. The people are just, it's just different. And there's times where I go back home, and I mean, literally, I still go to the same bakery that I went to when I was in 9th grade. And I often see some of the people that I grew up with. Invariably, I do. I can pop into certain businesses, and I go back. I'm taken back. And there's some security and comfort in that. My parents still live on the same property. So there's a part of me that when I step on that property, I'm just able to, and that's a wonderful blessing to still have that.
That is. So you also coach in workplace, sort of workplace culture, which I guess kind of can be like a school setting, right?
It can, absolutely.
So what is it, how do you change culture? And why do people have you come and talk to their employees or do staff trainings?
I think, again, we are feeling human beings that think. And corporations know that when you have an employee that feels seen and validated and part of the process and respected, that employee is going to increase their level of productivity, and they're going to increase engagement and discretionary effort. And all of that impacts the bottom line. So when we hear about emotional intelligence, that is huge today, because the social interaction and how managers treat employees, just like how teachers treat students and how principals create an environment where the teachers feel good about coming to, it's the same thing. And it's, again, the foundation is the relationship piece. Because, you know, Southwest, I love me some Southwest.
Yes.
Their motto is, we're in the customer service business, we just happen to fly planes. And when you have that intentionality from the top that says, we are going to create this environment to where people feel good about coming to work, they love stepping into that building, that culture can drive behavior, outlooks, everything having to do with productivity. And it's powerful when you have that synergy within a group of people that know that they are an important cog in that wheel of production.
Because you're right, Southwest treats everybody as a key player.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everybody.
That's right.
And it is about the customer, isn't it?
It is. Now imagine if our schools embrace that. Yeah. I mean, us having a customer service mindset when it comes to our students and our parents. That's where we need to get to, and that's where I'm continually nudging, and sometimes I feel like I'm grabbing people by the lapel and shaking the snot out of them, but I do what I need to. I got size 11s. I'll do what I need to do, but it's like it's about the relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, in our few moments we have left here, what do you want students to know? What do you want young people to know?
I want them to know that there has never been, nor will there ever be, another one just like them. And that if they could embrace their uniqueness and understand that they were put here with innate gifts and talents, and that there's nobody that can put a footprint on the world like them. And that when they're able to see the uniqueness and the beauty of who they are as an individual, that's when they're going to be able to go and have a positive impact on the world. And to be able to have the caring adults in their life to allow them to find the courage to embrace that uniqueness, it's a beautiful thing.
And what about their parents and their teachers? What do they need to know? Because those are two different sets of caring adults.
Parents need to know that if it looks different from what they imagine, it's okay, because they had a path and their child's path might look totally different. And that we have to allow that child to go on their journey and explore their individual gifts and talents. And teachers need to be able to know that you can't put them all in a box. They have to be able to create that community in the classroom that allows for that individuality and uniqueness to come forth.
We live in such a heavy media world.
Mm-hmm.
And especially students, I think, are so media savvy.
Yes.
Is that a disconnector?
Yes.
Or is it a disconnector?
Yes. I say that we're in a high-tech, low-touch society. I was on a Southwest flight reading in their magazine, and it said 53% of teens would give up their sense of smell before they would give up their cell phone. Now, I do life coaching, okay? And a lot of my clients are teenagers, and I ask them about this, and they look at me like I was crazy. It's like, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So when you're talking about, is there a lot of disadvantage? The ability to talk face to face, the ability to interact. Again, the emotional intelligence, that's not being developed in this generation because of the technology and how easy it is to keep the distance between human beings.
What's the answer to that?
Whew, girl. I think
We don't have enough time?
Yeah, whew, you got that right. I think a lot of it has to be monitoring by the parents, have them be aware of. We need to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. Parents need to be aware of their own, but there has to be an intentionality within the family structure that says, you know what, we're all putting our devices down and we're going to see if we can talk about something. We're going to have some quality time here, whether we want to or not.
So you're a life coach for teens.
I am, and young adults, yes.
Okay, that's got to be very rewarding.
It's amazingly rewarding. It is. Yeah, every client is different, and every opportunity to work with them is a gift.
All right, Tara, we only have a minute left. So last little bit, what's next for you?
Well, I'm doing some keynote speeches in the future. These next few months are pretty nutty, and I'm going to have the opportunity to just keep doing what I'm doing and spreading the word of connections and relationship, and knowing that that is the foundation of success when it comes to classroom, corporations, or any other venue.
Well, I'm glad we've had this chance to make a connection.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks for what you do. And I hope we'll get to visit again soon.
I'm going to trust that we will. Thank you.
Thanks.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.